the 5th or 6th year, we started adding goals that were personal, spiritual, and physical. The fun one, which, she'll murder me for this, but she's not going to listen to your podcast, so we're good, is that I put a number up on the board, and because I didn't want to write it out, right? And we have people over all the time, and the number was representing.
We all want to improve our lives, but sometimes it's hard to know where to start. Join us each week on the Stacking Habits podcast with your hosts, David, Matthew, and Caleb, as we uncover life-changing habits from inspiring people. Want to know the best part? You can then apply those habits to enrich your own life and move closer to your goals. Well, welcome to episode 1 of the Stacking Habits podcast. I'm thrilled to have our very first guest here, our guinea pig, Mike McCarthy. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be part of the band getting back together as an auxiliary member.
Indeed. Well, you can be the drummer. I feel like every band kicks their drummer out at some point.
Right.
So.
No one knows who the drummer is.
Yeah, you can be the welcome first guest. So I'm one of your hosts, Caleb, and I'm joined by
David
and Matthew.
And we are excited to be back together. So, Mike, you've got an interesting story. We'll have just kind of a precursor on the intro just to kind of welcome people to who you are. But before we dig into some of your habits that really set you apart, a couple things that I know about you. So we met in church several years ago when I first moved to Colorado. I now miss being in Colorado. And I feel like in the book industry, for whatever reason, we all we're miserable. And so we have to pull people into our misery. So you've been amazing. We've done a number of trips together, closing down some colleges, jumping in dumpsters, sleeping in Holiday Inns. We've been on some
Holiday Inn would have been nice based on some of the places we stayed to qualify.
We've been in some small towns and seen a lot. So thank you for always being an adventure buddy with me. You have a lot of energy. You're a father of 2, husband to 1. Don't flip that around.
Right, yeah.
You're a very intentional person. So I love being around you. I love seeing how you live your life. It always seems like you're doing 4 or 5 or 6 different gigs at any given time. I don't know how you juggle all those balls, so we'll kind of talk through that in terms of your habits. But you live life on purpose. I don't know anybody else that tries to get to know their neighbors as well as you do. You're very likely just to be hanging out with your neighbors, drinking margaritas. I barely know my neighbors, so the fact that you can do that, I really look up to that. So we'll dig into that on today's show as we get into it. But before we do that, let's bounce back a little bit because you have some crazy times in your past. I don't want to get into too many stories, but walk us through what was Mike like just after college.
Oh, geez, a hot mess in a short number of words. Probably, I would say, super amped up to be successful and high drive. I'll use it to describe one of my children, right? And those of you who have kids, if you have 2, you'll definitely understand. I've got one that is all thrust, no vector, right? 100 miles an hour in every different direction. And I've got one that is all vector, no thrust. Like he's got all the talent in the world, but we need to get going a little bit. So I would say I'm more like my all thrust, no vector in my 20s. I'm going to take on the world. I'm going to rise to the top. I'm going to accomplish this. And then I did, but in doing that, I didn't do it well. I could have done it way more efficiently for sure. Wouldn't say I burned bridges, but I figured out all the wrong ways to do things before I got to the most efficient or proper way to find that level of success in my 20s.
Did you have like a come to Jesus wake up call at some point? Like what changed from high performer, high thrust, as you call it, to the point where like now you're very intentional? You still have the energy.
I think, I was in finance, right? And the SEC showed up. That was an interesting story for
No
another
way.
Yeah, it's like took our hard drives and everything else like that.
No way.
Like rated the place.
That's correct, right? So that was fun. And then I went back to, short story, went back to my college job, which was parking cars. And
Like valet,
like valet, because I could make cash. And I was like, I had my Series 7 when I was 20, and before I could drink, which was awesome when you go out with everybody and you're the sober driver because you're also the F&G. But but I went back to this other company, and I was early on in that company, so I made partner really, really quickly with them.
What kind of company?
Managed services for healthcare, hospitality, and commercial real estate for parking. type of deal. And it's where I got my first exit out of it. But all that to say is you figure out a lot of stuff when you're young, hungry, and serving two masters. So the come to Jesus meeting was after I had won like MVP a couple times, always hit my numbers, all these things. And my CEO goes, your client doesn't like you. And I'm like, why? He goes, he thinks you're arrogant. And I was like, well, I am.
Guilty.
Yeah. And he goes, you know what the difference between confidence and arrogance is? And I said, no, what? And I'll clean it up a bit. But he goes, having your crap together, right? You can, if you have your crap together 100% of the time, cool. But once you don't, they're going to remember that and hold it. And I was like, man, my client doesn't like me. And I'm not a people pleaser by nature. I married one, so I know what that looks like from the healthy and unhealthy version of it all. But I was like, if he doesn't like me, come contract renewal, I'm out a significant amount of money. So that was kind of the, let me take an inventory of how I'm interacting and am I being intentional with my client the way they wanted me to be intentional with them. And kind of woke me up a little bit and started putting things into practice that developed into habits later on in life.
Love it. So you grew up on the East Coast, Maryland?
That's correct.
And then how'd you end up out here in beautiful Denver?
So that same company that I went back for, you know, you're in your 20s, you're not married or anything. They just sent me around the country to fix things, right? Call it the wolf, call it the, you know, getting stuff done or whatever it was. But it's like, hey, we got to fire this guy and make this right, or fix this problem, or increase revenue here, or those sort of things. So I was in Indiana, where you're from. I've been in Kentucky, Tennessee, Florida. All that to say, I came out here for a 6-month assignment and met my wife at the property that I was working at. And I'm like, wow, I like it here. And that 6 month turned into 20 years.
Amazing, huh?
Yeah. I'm almost at that point where I've lived in Colorado longer than Maryland. And then you're like, whoa,
Yeah.
like where are you from?
Did you like the travel lifestyle when you were younger? Did you enjoy that?
Yeah, it was great. I mean, what wasn't great was paying like $2,000 a month for rent that I never stayed in.
Yeah.
But, and you know, that's DC rent at the time. So
Yeah, it's probably $4 or $5 grand.
Yeah,
Oh my
that's
gosh.
crazy now.
Yeah, it's insane.
yeah.
So there's a number of habits I like about you. One, in the pre-call, we kind of talked about it. I guess for lack of a better term, we can call it mini touches.
Yeah.
But one thing you do really well is just out of the blue, you'll send me a text and you remember that I like to play Wake Me Up When September Ends on September 1st.
That's correct.
And you can just pick up the phone, call me on my birthday, or hey, I saw this thing, it reminded me of you. And you just, there's no agenda, there's not an angle, it's not, hey, can you also do this? It's literally just, I thought of you, I care about you. So walk us through that. Is that always something you've done, or like has that something that you've sort of built over time?
I'd say built over time because, you know, I'm in my 40s, but it was modeled to me well unintentionally by my dad and his friends. And, you know, I'm in my 40s. I was a late adopter of a cell phone. So when I grew up, people would swing by your house just to say, hey, right? Hey, what you got going on? You know, that type of deal. So whether it was
You
my
could
dad's
get shot for doing that.
exactly, right? Stand your ground, right? You
Yeah.
know, or whatever. But but it was not weird for someone to come by and say, hey, without needing anything. So that's the earliest memory of having it. And then as I matured through business, through everything else, we've heard the cliche, your relationship or your network is your net worth. Well, I don't look at people as dollar signs. I look at them as friends for the most part. And I never want to get too far removed from somebody that it would be a surprise that I would call them and need something, because you never know when you're going to need something. You know, I've traveled the States, I've traveled the world. I call some of my best friends in South America, Europe, because if I'm going to get stuck somewhere, and if anything that we learned during the last couple of years is that governments can change the rules and you might need a place to stay in a third world country, right? That's a good thing to have. So part of it might have a little bit of fear-based, but also the habit allows me to be the one friend that people know that will call them without an agenda or out needing anything. So my rhythm, typically when I'm commuting or out on a walk during lunch or anything, is I call 3 people a day.
Wow.
3 randos a day. I mean, I've got several hundred people in my phone, so it's like there's going to be some repeats, obviously.
Do you systematize that?
No, I haven't yet.
So there's no software,
Just
no
scroll
anything.
through?
It's
That
whoever pops
I'm
into your
certainly
head.
not using it. It's just like, hey, it's September 1st. Caleb posts, wake me up when September ends.
old
My
Green
birthday's
Day
in
song.
September, and I'm like, man, why are you such a rain cloud on my birthday? But I also love Green Day. I love Caleb, and it makes me think of you. Or I'll go by a field where I played ultimate frisbee with a couple of guys, and I was like, man, I haven't seen them since they moved to the other side of town. Let me give them a shout. Or I'll think of something, like David, I don't think I've seen you since the Nuggets game. And I'm
Yeah.
sitting here going,
Yeah.
man, we got to go to the Nuggets game and they won a championship. How cool was that? And believe it or not, you're sitting below a Jokic picture right
Yeah,
now.
wow.
And he hit
Yeah,
a
so ju-
three-pointer at the buzzer to win
That was a
game.
buzzer
Right,
to
yeah.
win. That was a perfect game.
That was
to watch,
amazing.
Yeah.
So just random thoughts will come in my message. And look, most people send me to voicemail, right? Because they're busy. Like, I assume they have nothing going on and they're on walks, right? And
Well, if somebody calls me anymore, I almost am like, are they in trouble?
right.
Like my heart rate goes up because no one calls.
Yeah.
It's always a text.
I feel like people feel it's awkward sometimes to call without an agenda. It just feels like you need to call only when you have an agenda. Otherwise, it feels kind of awkward to randomly call
But
someone. I feel like
Mike
most people
does it
talk.
I don't.
really
I know,
well.
but you do it well. Yeah.
Yeah. So my voicemail is typically, hey, it's McCarthy, because my name's Mike, and everybody whose name's Mike has to go by their last name. That's just one of the things that you just deal with in life. I'm like, no need to call me back. Saw blank. Thought of you. Hope you're doing well. Love to catch up in the next 2 to 3 weeks if it works out. And 90% of the time, I get the call back or a text going, man, I'm slammed at work. Thanks for thinking of me. Hope you and the family are well. Now, that's done selflessly, right? But selfishly, should I ever need to reach out to Caleb, like, Caleb, I'm in a pinch. I need help with X, right? That's not the first time that you're hearing from me,
Exactly.
right? There's still a relationship. And again, I don't use it for monetary gain or anything else like that, but people call me all the time, whether it's friggin' lift a refrigerator or a gun safe or financial advice or habit stacking podcasts or
Move a
whatever.
truckload of books.
Flipping
you know,
books.
Right,
anything
yeah.
like that.
It's like, so to your point, Matthew, most people have an agenda, and I try to be not that person.
Man, that's like the worst feeling in the world. At least for me, it's like, I'm sure you guys each know like one or two or a handful of people.
I got a couple
It's
in
like
mind.
You only hear from them when they need something. And it's like, it's a dread whenever they show up. You're like, oh shoot, what am I going to move this time?
Right.
Well, and you can tell too when they call and they're going through the pleasantries, and you can just already feel the angle,
Oh,
and you're
for
like, all right,
sure.
let's.
Yep.
What are we here for?
Yeah. Yeah.
David,
sure.
you're incredibly intentional as well.
Yeah.
Anybody I pick up a phone, I try and be like Mike. I guess be like Ike or be like Mike. I try and be like him, and I'll pick up the phone and call someone that I haven't talked to in 6 months, and they're like, "Yeah, David was just down here." So you do a really good job. Do you structure that out, or how do you decide?
You travel to people. You travel. a lot to
Yeah,
people.
he does one better. He shows up on their
He
phone.
goes to see them.
Yeah. Well, so like one of the things that was resonating with me was what you were saying is like you sort of fall into these rhythms of life. Like every September you think of Caleb. And for me too, it's like depending on the season, like if it's kind of gloomy out, certain people just come to mind. And so now it's not like, oh,
It's really
I'm like,
dark and gloomy
yeah,
out.
I should
thought
call
of you.
Caleb up. Yeah. But like, you fall into these rhythms of life. You pass by, you drive by certain areas that remind you of people. And like for me, like I feel fortunate because it feels very much like second nature where I'm just like you said, it's just like, once every 6 months or once every year, you just fall into this habit of being like, oh, hey, this reminded me of this person. I should reach out to them. And so if you look at my text messages, it's like random who I talk to, but it's literally because, oh, hey, I drove by this flower shop and like, hey, how's everything going? And so like, for me, it's not so forced. I'm sure it's the same for you, but it's more so like kind of getting into a routine and just like through the patterns of life, like it almost feels natural.
For sure. And we're built to be in community. And the easiest way to stay in community is to stay in contact with people without it being transactional. And I think that intentionality allows us to remain honest, transparent, as opposed to transactional in nature. We do enough transactions with everything else. So, also, I have this stupid fear. You ever seen the movie Big Fish?
Oh yeah.
Right? Like,
don't think
I want my funeral to be like that.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Where like there's 1 billion people at my funeral, because then my kids will go, man, my dad was loved by a lot of people. And like, I would hate to be, like 4 people show up and sign the book type of deal. And
I want to be the guy that was in like a bike gang that nobody knew about. And so I show up, they think I'm this straight laced guy, and all these like guys in leather jackets.
That would
and
be
tattoos.
fantastic.
They're like,
that's
what was
big
Caleb
fish
into?
right there. Yeah.
like,
Kind of shifting the subject, like, do you feel that this habit of like intentional touches without an agenda, does it have to be natural, or could you like almost like put in the calendar, hey, on this day, reach out to this person, systemize it, where it's a little bit more like, I guess not natural, but like you implement it. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. I think you could, because there's lots of bad sales. I lead sales organizations now, both contract and full time, and there are lots of bad salespeople that can do the activity.
Okay.
Right. Salesforce. If they want to give you money, that'd be awesome for your podcast. But Salesforce has
the logo right here.
The reminders for that. I'm sure they can do that to a degree.
Does it work though? Is it effective?
Staying relevant is effective, right,
Yeah.
in all sorts of sales. But again, I just do that not from a standpoint of trying to sell something.
Sure.
I just do it for network, because to what Caleb mentioned earlier, I typically have 4 or 5 things going on. If my sole focus is people in this particular vertical, right, then I'm going to really limit my ability to be successful if I get bored and want to change things.
I think one thing that really stands out, and maybe to your point, what you could do to shorten that feedback loop from the thought. I think most of us have thoughts of, I remember having dinner at the bindery with the whole team or whatever. And when you have those moments where you think of your team, instead of just letting that moment pass by, just text, pick up the phone, call.
Just act on it.
Exactly.
Yep.
So I think most of us have things pop into our heads, and you actually do the work to put it into practice.
Yeah, the other adage that someone, I can't remember who said this, maybe it's someone famous, intent always outpaces execution. So like, I intend to call them, but I never actually execute and do it. So I try to balance that out a little
I
bit.
think Book of James maybe be doers of the word, not hearers only.
Could be that.
I just read a book. I've been reading a lot of books on sabbatical on the break here, and I am so guilty of that, where I take all these notes and I've got all these ideas and I have all these great intentions, and I don't put it into practice. So I read a book on breath, gave it to my buddy Shane. He read the same book, and the next time we're training for a triathlon, we go out and we're running, and he's talking about how he's like taking sips of air and putting all these things into practice. And I'm like, what? So I read the book, I gave it to him, like helped his life, but he's better than me because he actually put it into practice. So if you don't do anything or act on it, who cares? You can have all the intentions in the world.
That's correct.
Yeah. So you've done a number of things in your life. Do you want to just color in a few pieces of that? I know you've worked in the printing industry, real estate industry, Youth for Christ. You're doing some parking software now.
Yep.
So walk us through just maybe the last 6 to 8 things you've done, because it's probably been in the last year.
Consulting, books, sales, leadership, different verticals. I mean, people are people, right? Like, I think you named most of them in the last deal. The parking has been awesome because it's AI technology, and I think that's super scary and super interesting in a vertical that people are going to figure out in the next 5 to 7 years, but we have a pretty good head start. So I like the product that we have with the camera technology. I don't got a tinfoil hat on, but the amount of data that's circulating about the 4 of us in this room right now is incredible. And that kind of blew my mind. So I'm trying to learn more about that one. The traveling the world with Youth for Christ International, fantastic. The perfect season of life before my kids got too old, where we could go around and see the rest of the world, really just understand how to be the hands and feet, but also give, like not just financially, but like give some of the resources that we've learned, be it leadership, management, how to build a small business, how to meet people of different socioeconomical backgrounds. Like, that was super cool. The printing company was awesome. I fell into that. That was just dumb luck, and was really, really cool. My opinion, no offense, printing people, it's boring. That's not my gift. I mean, it makes good money.
We talked about this at dinner last night. The trick is, like, it's fun to do a podcast and do, the exciting things, but I think the money is in the boring businesses.
I know.
And it's stuff that it's not sexy, it's not glamorous, but if you can do it well,
right?
you
And
can
it's-
crush
I
it.
it's
don't know if
literally
you've
like
seen The Office, but paper can be pretty fun.
that's exactly what I was going to say. It's like The Office, where it's like the same 5 people. They all have their personalities, and the machines are running, and it's rinse and repeat. And that's not my personality type. But I mean, look, paid the bills, right? I'm not upset with that at all,
Yeah.
and still have a small interest there. And then when we changed the way real estate was done, and you start to get cease and desist letters from big places, that's how you know you're really doing something well. Like Redfin, like, hey, you need to stop doing this. I'm like, what are you talking about? We invented this. Pound sand, right? And then spend more money in legal than profit. But
Do you want to share just a 30-second overview there?
I'm
we-
so curious.
Yeah,
we
I'm
were
really
able to
curious what you're talking
scale the real estate transaction to 13 states, 13 different markets.
So traditional real estate is take 2.5%, 3% per side. You guys flip that around.
Yeah,
and did what?
we were the largest flat fee provider where we didn't compromise the service. It wasn't a do-it-yourself type of deal. So we sold about 4,000 houses a year. And then to the point about data, we were collecting a ton of data. Like we knew you were going to sell your house before you did, right? And so we were just able to close.
I think that's Amazon too. They know when you're pregnant before you are.
Absolutely.
They
You're
just
gonna
know
start getting-
based on all these trends and histories. And
Yeah.
I don't know how they do it, but they know us.
Yeah, so all that together has given me more experience than I'm ever going to get in college, more experience than I'm ever going to get reading a book. And I mentioned early on in the podcast that I figured out a lot of wrong ways to do things. That doesn't go away magically when you go into another business. You got to fail forward every single day. And through those ventures, right, I would say that all of them were successful, maybe not to the level of, billion-dollar unicorn status, but we didn't go broke, and we learned a ton. I ran a real estate company, and I've had to short sale a property, right? And that short sale it probably cost me at the time $25,000 or something like that. That was the best education I ever got in real estate. And it was just timing. I had to go through the process. But once you go through it, you have that stuff, and you can survive a $25,000 mistake.
Yeah.
Right?
They say it's best to learn from other people's mistakes, but there's nothing like your own.
Oh,
If you
yes.
really want to learn and internalize the lesson, go make the dang mistake.
I mean, I'd be happy for you to write that check, right?
Right.
So instead of me, but that wasn't the
Exactly.
case.
So with all the things you do, one thing we talked about in the pre-call is that you crush mornings, your
Mm-hmm.
words. So not Orange Crush, the soda, but what does that mean, and how has that habit helped you do, like you've essentially lived 4 or 5 different lives with all the careers you've had. And you do Ironmans on top of that. So how do you find time to be a father, husband, a good neighbor, a good business person? How do you juggle all of those?
So if you want it, this is my opinion only. Some people that are listening are probably got a different household situation. But for me, if I'm going to stay married and I want to accomplish all of this, I cannot sacrifice family time or kid stuff. So it's going to come down to 2 things. It's either my work, which puts a roof over our head, or my sleep, right? And a couple of things that set me up for success is getting up super early.
How early are we talking?
5.
Like Matthew early?
5, no.
All right.
Five is regular for me. If I sleep in, it's 6. Like, man, what happened, right? And that's part of that has to do with living back in the D.C. area and commuting into D.C., that if you were on the road at 5:30, you'd make it there by 6:30. If you're on the road at 5:45, you're getting in at 8, right?
Yeah,
that's nuts.
just because of traffic. So I've always been an early riser, and I don't stay up super late type of deal. But when I say crush mornings, when I was training for Ironman, my wife's like, you can do this, but you still got to pick up the kids, right? And we're still going to have dinner as a family. And by the end of the day, you're too tired to go swim a mile or go run 5 or go ride for 30, whatever it was. So it'd be like, all right, 5 a.m., let's get after it. And then between 5 and 6:30, everyone's asleep anyway. So my family was not missing out. And the same went into business, where I cover 4 time zones, right, with my sales team right now. So that's the entire United States, continental anyway. And if I'm up early, I can get more work done in 2 hours. And you all know this, you're nodding because you experienced it, right? Come 9 o'clock when everybody else starts bugging you and the automated emails that are going out for different pitches start hitting you and everything. Like, the world just gets real busy at 9 a.m. for whatever reason. And then it leaks into the evenings, 6:30, 7 o'clock. So I try to pre-plan the day and get all of my outbound stuff done super earlier. Any of my long-range planning done super early so that by 9, 10 o'clock in the morning, I'm now catching fly balls and setting myself for success. Plus, I like being done by about 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And that allows me to meet my neighbors, to go on walks, to have fun with my kids, to coach soccer, those sort of things. And really just focus on what matters to me. So that's the morning routine. It's not special. It's not like I brush my teeth. Just get up early and get after it, and recognize that you don't have to work a 9 to 5. If I want to go on a date night with my wife, right now it's really tough. I've got a daughter in cheerleading, a son in soccer, plus school. But you know what isn't tough? Date lunches, right? So it's like, whoa, that's not the same date. Well, yeah, it is. We're spending an hour and a half, right, together with each other, focused, phones off, spending that time. So it's just switching a little bit. So rather than start the day at 9, I start the day at as soon as I finish working out or whatever it looks like before everybody wakes up, and then just get after it.
Are there times in your past where you've gotten off in the mornings, you've maybe slept in more often, you've gotten out of that morning routine? Have you had long stretches of kind of being off of it, or are you pretty good at getting right back into it if you sleep in one day or it's just more difficult at some point in time? Or have you been long stretches in your past where you haven't done that?
I have definitely fallen off the wagon, so to speak, and it is hard to get back into routine. It's like, I think it was John Acuff. He's a pretty smart guy. He said, day 2 is the hardest of everything, because day 1 you have the excitement, right? Like, oh, I'm going to go out and I'm going to train for a triathlon. And then that excitement's over. You told everybody, and then day 2, it gets really, really hard. And you're like, oh, well, I'm on like day 15 of the hard 75, if y'all are familiar with that trendy thing right now.
Because right now you are 15?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so I'm one of those guys that has to have something, otherwise I'm not motivated. I'll go through the motions.
Typical sales
Dude,
guy.
I feel like this is a super hard 75. Most people start at the beginning of the year, and so you kind of have like other people keeping you accountable. Is it just you doing the...
No, my wife's along with me.
Okay.
We have 2 other friends. One of them who inspired me to do it, turns out he actually didn't do it. And so
oh, man.
I was basing the fact
Day
that
2 was too hard for
It's
him.
like when someone gives you a book, but they haven't like implemented.
Hey, come on now.
Right, yeah. But it's like I'm at the point right now where I'm not even over the halfway point. And I'm like, if I just start over, it's going to be like way easy, right? Way easy just to quit right now. But yeah, I fall off. It's hard to get back into it, and you got to push through. And then it's like, man, I will be happier when this is done. It'll be worth it when this is done. So it's not easy, right? Get sick, travel, jacks it all up.
Travel will throw all of your habits off.
Yeah.
What I like about your morning routine, even though it's not routine, is that you're playing offense. It's way too easy to play defense. So many times with Scout IQ, we end up playing defense and waiting for someone else to move and then trying to figure out what to do with it and react instead of being proactive. And if you can just do even 2 hours of being proactive, sets you up for success.
Yeah, it's kind of like if you've ever gotten smoked, and by that I mean yelled at by somebody. They say, I'm looking for progress reports, not status reports. So don't come to me with a status report. Like, I can figure that out by running a report in, insert database here. I want to know what the progress is, and the answer can't be no progress, right? So that's the deep-seated mentality, I guess you could say, is like, let's make progress every day. And it's probably going to lead us to where you're heading with this. Like, there's no metrics for life, right? I can rank myself in sales. I can rank myself in business. We know what our KPIs are, our OKRs, et cetera. But for you to verbalize that, I've never really thought about it like I'm playing offense. And that takes me to, well, how are we ranking my offense? How are we doing with that? But the only real metric you have in life is like your age, I guess.
Yeah.
Like, how old are you and what are you doing with it? But everything else is cursory.
It's what you want to do. I came up with the primary idea from reading The One Thing by Real Estate Gary Keller and Jay Papasan. But their whole thing was be intentional and block off 4 hours a day to do the one thing you should be doing. If you're an author, it's writing your book. If it's, we talked to Avery a lot about building his software. And he's doing a number of things just like you, but the most important thing he can do right now is build his software. So when you block out and you're intentional and you turn your phone off or set it to do not disturb and make sure your emails aren't popping up, that allows you to go just put your head down and do that work. And I found that when I did that, I would get way more done in 4 hours than I would in an entire day.
Yeah.
And then the rest of it's just gravy. You want to field, call random people. You want to field emails. Cool, have at it. You've already been successful that day.
Absolutely. You mentioned offense, and there's very small things that I do that are intentional. And I can't remember if it was you or you, Matthew, or another guy when we got together on Zoom via COVID. The number one thing that got me motivated to go work downstairs in my basement, which was brand new for me, was putting a belt on. Because if I put a belt on, right, that meant I got dressed for work, as opposed to just putting athletic shorts on. And
So would you put your athletic shorts on with a belt? Just
No,
for
no,
the
I wouldn't do
significance
that.
of it?
No. But it's like I put pants on, right? Now it's time to go to work, as opposed to just athleisure wear or anything else like that. And that changed my mindset completely.
It does. It's weird how what you wear really does change your mindset. Like, just you're more. I've noticed that too. Like, more productive if I actually get dressed and then go sit at my desk versus just sitting in my workout clothes I finish my workout with.
I think there are all sorts of different like actions that trigger like a different state of mind. Like for me, it's haircuts. So if I'm like having a horrible day or horrible week where nothing's going my way, I'll go in for a haircut. I'll feel like all that weight is just shut off. I feel like I'm a new person. And it's kind of like one trick that I have in my tool belt that'll just like reset my mentality. And so it sounds like kind of the belt was the same thing for you.
Absolutely. I mean, I wish I had your hair and I could get faded up like that. But yeah, the belt was good.
So forget all the other habits. Wear a belt.
Get
Thanks for
faded.
coming to the pod.
Right, yeah.
All right, we're going to switch gears here. I think the most unique habit, and that's why I wanted to have you on the show. I've had the privilege of staying in your guest suites many times, so thank you for hosting me. And no matter how well we do in business, I think I'm always still, one, cheap, and it's nice to have a spot to lay my head, but it's also great to have that intentionality, and we always go down and take our morning walk down to the coffee shop, and it's just kind of our ritual that when I come to Colorado, I see Mike, and so that's really nice. One thing that stands out to me, and I know it's been very instrumental in your family's history and the success and the intentionality, you've got a board. It's maybe 2 feet by 3 feet,
No, it's not that big.
or it's really small.
It's you're talking about the goal board.
Yeah.
So for context, and my door's never locked, right? Well, that's not true.
Well, I'll share the address after the
Yeah,
episode.
we'll edit that
Edit
part out.
that part out.
Edit that part out. So many people come to my house, and what we have in my dining room on this weird wall where there used to be a landline that I
A what?
Yeah, right.
How old are you?
Right. How old's the house? Is this chalkboard, and it's a goal board. It's probably 18 inches by 24 inches, somewhere
I've
in there.
seen that one, yeah.
So nothing fancy, just a chalkboard.
Yep, just a chalkboard. And my wife went all, a Hobby Lobby on it, and got the nice pins and everything, and the trim around it. So it looks like it's meant to be there. There's probably 4 billion better things out there, but I haven't figured out a way to mass produce it for her because everyone asks about it. And what's on it now is the 4 of our names, our theme for the year,
A family theme.
family theme, whether it's a word or a goal or anything.
What's this year's theme?
This year's theme is dwell, right? We just kind of want to like slow down a little bit. Really, it's gratitude, right? And just dwell in the space. And you can use that in so many different contexts. You can do it in the Christian context of dwelling with the Lord. You can use it in the context of I just want to be grateful that I have this dwelling, right? Lots of different words out there, but that took some thought. And there's usually 3 goals under each one of our names. It's our family metric. It's our family KPI. And the ritual of it that you alluded to in earlier episode is that's our New Year's Eve party. So when you work in the hospitality and healthcare world, there's 2 things that rarely close: hospitals and hotels. And New Year's, I didn't have New Year's for 15 years, so I never like bought into the excitement or got real excited about it. So it was just another night for me. But we've used that as a night that we do family goals. And what do we want to accomplish next year that we didn't? And through that process, we've done some amazing things. But it wasn't like always, hey, one day we're going to do family goals. And I've told this story to Caleb. I know I've told it to Matthew. David, you get to hear it.
All right.
So my wife and I, when we were early and married, were broke. And like everyone's been broke at some point in their life, I imagine. And I remember coming home. I wasn't making a lot of money. I was getting destroyed at work. We had a kid. And I saw like 3 Target bags And I'm like, what the hell did you buy at Target? Right?
Again.
Like we don't need that. You know, we're a single income family. I'm stressed out of my gourd. And she goes, yes, we do need that. I'm here. You don't know, blah, blah, blah. Big fight, right? And I'm like, do you know how much it costs to be us every year? Because I do. And it doesn't include random trips to Target where you think you're going to spend $5 and, you know, we're going to get $50 worth of stuff because that's what happens when you go shopping. And hear me loud and clear, the listeners, I'm the guy that goes to Costco for 3 items, forgets 2 of them, and comes home with a TV, some chops, you know, a coat, and everything else that I don't need.
Guilty.
Right? So anyway, we had to work through this fight. And working through it, what we figured out was the best way for us to handle money wasn't to focus on what we were spending. So we changed the paradigm, and I said, I want to save $25,000 this year. I think that was the number, which seems like a huge stretch, right? Like because
especially if you're
Especially not
broke.
making much. Yeah,
because I'm not making anything,
Yeah.
right? I want to save 25,000. That was my goal.
So you took what could be a very complex process. There's 1,000 ways to budget, right? Every Instagram influencer has their specific budget. There's the 50, 30, 20, whatever. You boiled that down to one metric. It's almost the profit first mentality,
Right.
Where you said, instead of we have this much money on food or clothes or entertainment or whatever, you just said, I don't care what we do.
Right.
I just want to save 15 grand.
Yeah, 50. Forget what
Whatever it was, 20
what-
grand.
It wasn't. Now that I'm thinking, when I was making that year, it definitely wasn't 25,000, but it might have been. Let's call it 10
Okay.
for argument. Which it was a huge lift. I mean, we've got kids in diapers. We got to eat. I've got a mortgage. Right. I'm fiscally responsible.
Is this like 25,000 cash or like 25 or 10,000
Whatever
in
number.
equity or like
In my bank account.
Okay, in your bank account,
Because
cash.
we made a conscious decision that we were going to be a single income family
Mm-hmm.
because when you factor in what it cost for childcare where we were living, it would be like we make $6,000 a year net for her having a full-time job when you factor in childcare and logistics.
Right.
And it's like, all right, let's just figure out a way to make another $6,000. Right. That was the original conversation, and then have somebody else let her raise our kids, and that was the right decision for us. I qualify that some people can't do that. Anywho, so yeah, we flipped it. I didn't want to care what she was spending.
You didn't want to nitpick.
I didn't know. I didn't like fighting with her over whether or not she was buying chips that I would ultimately eat, right? Because they're in the house that we didn't need.
Honey, I didn't need those. Okay, fine.
What I cared about was the sense of security I got from looking at our bank account going up. And that changed things dramatically. She goes, okay, you're not allowed to say a word, right? But if we hit that 10 grand number, we feel like we're successful for this year. We hit that number in like 7 months.
wow.
Right? And part of it was her doing side hustle stuff, right? But also we looked at our spending, and we were actually saving enough. I was just getting angry about stuff that really didn't matter. So we established a goal that we were both happy with, and it went on the goal board. And it was out there, and people were like, what's that number? What's that 10,000? It's like, how much I want to save this year? Like, you can save $10,000? I'm sure as hell going to try, you know?
Yeah.
So was this part of her Target purchase? Did she have a...
No, it wasn't. No,
Okay.
this was...
So you didn't like commandeer or something? That she
No, I
had
think
picked
we
up?
had it. She taught for a while, so she had like classroom supplies and all this other stuff. And but that was the first goal that went on the board.
So you hung this on your wall?
Hung it on the
back
wall.
then and just wrote the number 10,000.
Right. And when you're broke, you don't go out for dates, right? You invite people over, right? What can I bring? Type of deal. And so people would ask us about this, like, what is this? And this is a goal. Why do you want to do this? And I'd tell the same story there that we just told everybody here. It's like, I didn't want to fight over how much my spouse was spending. Like, she's a grown woman. She can do math. She knows everything. Like, I was devaluing her, if I'm honest, right? Like, I thought that I was smarter than that. And that wasn't fair to her at all. It was just a completely wrong read on my part. But it was my own fear and insecurity of our bank account and that metric that I cared more about than whether or not she was making the right decision for me. And I've since apologized, and it's been 15 years since and everything else. So,
She still remembers.
right. So we're good there. But then we added other goals to that goal board.
So this was 15 years ago. That was goal number 1.
Correct.
And I love it because what gets measured gets managed.
Yep.
And so if that's front and center every day, even just like out of the corner of your eye, you're eating breakfast and you're like, oh yeah, 10,000. That's what we're working
I'll
towards.
pack my lunch,
Yeah.
right? Things like that. And what it does is, so year 1, we hit that goal. Well, we didn't just stop saving money. we keep saving. It developed a habit that has created us to be in a financial position that allows us to do other things, right? Give more money away, travel, right? Play extracurricular activities, different things out there. And it's not all about money, but that was a habit that started from that story that, like, you just don't forget how to do good things, right? They stay with you. You didn't forget how to walk or ride a bike, right? But once you get the thought process shifted in there and focus on it, it kind of stays with you.
Yeah, there's a natural feedback loop there as you continue to get closer to that goal. And then even as you exceed it, you're used to doing that. That's become a habit. You're stacking Benjamins, not habits.
Right.
I love that story. And I love how you simplify something that can be complex and leads to a lot of arguments, and just said, hey, I don't care where the money goes as long as we have this much left at the end.
Right. We're not looking at opportunity cost in our household, right? Well, I can tell you that we increased the number, right? Inflation gets higher, things go up. Like, we have to look at things differently, which also forced me to take different roles that we talked about a little bit. When you go, if I maintain just what I make here and I get a 3% cost of living raise every year, but insurance goes up 5%, right? We're going to be negative here pretty soon. So you got to focus on things like that. But knowing what was important to us, like, you got to grow. You got to grow your career. You got to grow your personal P&L. I know how much it costs to be me, and most of my friends don't.
I love that phrase. You snuck it in earlier. I was just going to allude back to it, and I talk about this on our past
we were
podcast.
talking about it last night too.
Yeah. And I steal this all the time, so credit to where credit's due is Mike McCarthy. But the question is, what does it cost to be me? And most people don't know the answer to that. And if you don't know the answer to that, how do you set goals? How do you build habits around personal finance? So I love that question. I ask it to a lot of people, and I usually get blank stares going, well, I don't know.
Yeah. And I know what our baseline is. I know what it looks like if we're going to go somewhere for 2 weeks and we're going to spend an additional $10K, because that's about what it costs to go anywhere for 2 weeks anymore, unless we're staying in some of the places we stayed in early lives. But that's an important thing to me. And I don't have a spreadsheet. I don't track everything. I just know, right? Like, because you're in tune with your income, you're in tune with your expenses, you're in tune with your spouse. But I know what that number is, so that I know what I need to earn that year. If you're in sales, and that's my lean for sure, right? You know what your commission numbers are going to be better than your boss does, right? You know what your pipeline looks like. You know what it's going to take, whether you're going to be on a plan or you're going to be in bonus territory. And it's not that big of a leap to go from the business world to your personal P&L. So yeah, we rarely throw anything financial on the board anymore. It's more like, what do we want to accomplish this year? I had a birthday recently, and my wife said, what is one thing you want to do this year that, now that you're this age, that you haven't done before? I have no idea.
That's a great question.
Like we pretty much do what we want, and we don't. You reach a certain age for Christmas where you have no idea what you want people to get you, because if you need it, you have it, and if you want it, you'll just go buy it.
Sure.
I think that's the same about life. But one thing that's on the goal board that I'm kind of geeking out a little bit, talking about reading a lot of books and not doing anything with it yet, is I want to learn how to sail. And
Really?
yeah, sail. Like, sail.
I'd like that too. That'd be fun.
Okay. Yeah, I just have this, I would love to be on the ocean and have to deal with nature and figure it out. And but I would like to have a knowledge base. So that's like a huge goal of mine. Now, we're in Colorado.
I was going to
Yeah,
say,
you got to go a little bit.
Right.
There's some reservoirs you can.
Yeah,
get
you can
after.
go there, but that's a commitment.
Yeah.
Right. And so I'm in jeopardy of not hitting that goal this year, because how I originally planned it was, I'm going to read all these books, and I had a plan in my head. I'm going to read these books. I'm going to take 4 classes here, and then I'm going to go down to the Gulf and work a boat for 2 weeks, and read some of the books, didn't take any of the classes, still have the trip down to the Gulf planned, right? And we're getting into Q4 of the year, and I'm like,
It's crazy.
I need to get some classes under my belt, otherwise
Time to put that belt on.
right. It's going to be a problem. But that stares me in the face every day. So when I go grab my coffee and I look and go, my son scored 3 goals. He hit his goal. He read 15 books. He hit his goal. My daughter nailed a back handspring. That was a goal for hers. That was a stretch goal for her, right? She practiced her Spanish every single day, and my wife goes, and hits her goals, whatever they are. And I'm going, man, I don't want to be the one person who doesn't perform in my family. And I really don't want to, because I'm leading our household. I want to set an example that if you want something, you have to work for it. So when am I going to read those books and take those classes? Well, the answer is when they're available, but I'm going to have to move other things around, which goes into the morning habit stacking. So if I can't be at work, say, from 4 to 6 p.m. because I'm taking classes over at Chatfield, I'm going to have to move that around somewhere. I'm going to have to go to the morning and go, what else can I do today so that I can free up 4 to 6 and not compromise what I have going on in this space?
Love it.
It's the same concept, like you with your sales background. It's the same concept of like a leaderboard, having a public leaderboard. And it's like you're used to, being top 5, and then you drop down to like, top 10, and maybe you're like 10, 11, 12. You're like, oh man, I need to get my act together so I can get back on top. And it's just like the family goals and how you run your family. It's really interesting because like these are concepts that I'm sure all of us has experienced in business where, it's like if you have a team under you and you don't tell them what the objective is, if there's no communication, no accountability, nothing's going to get done.
That's right.
And I think so many people think that, hey, you know what, it only works in business. But the reality is like these concepts work whenever they're humans, and a home is one of those.
Absolutely.
Sorry, there's 2 questions for you. How young were your kids when you started having them participate in this goal board? And then do you just let them pick what they want, or do you kind of help guide and steer their goals they pick each year?
Yeah, great question. I don't remember the age, but it was probably within the last 4 years. So that would say the youngest would have been 6.
Okay.
Right. And it had to be something that it was their goal. And anyone that has set goals for other people realizes that that's not effective. So I'm like, Mace, you're going to learn Spanish, right? No, I'm not, right? That's not going to happen. So it was that. Now, where I push them a little bit is if it's, the natural inclination is to take something that's achievable.
Too easy.
Yeah, it's not a goal, right? I'm going to score 3 goals. Well, you're going to play for 3 seasons this year, right? If you don't score 3 goals, we're picking up a new sport, So that type of deal. So we want to make sure that we're setting that accordingly for them. And then they understand this is the process. The other thing that goes into the goal setting with them, which is a fascinating question to ask a 12 and 10-year-old respectively, is why? Why do you want to do that? I don't know. Right? Okay. Well, why? And then they get really angry. And then but we do it ourselves. Like, why do I care about hitting my target? Why do I care about sailing? Right? Why? I can tell you that when you train for a triathlon, and Caleb, you just went through this, and my why for doing an Ironman is not Caleb's, but it was deeply personal, and it was enough of a motivator to get me to go ride my bike in 2 layers of pants when it was -10 out. It was so important to me that I would get up at 4:30 in the morning to make the 5 a.m. swim time, when I didn't want to run when you're hurting, and to eat lots of carbs, right? And deal with it all, because that was such an important goal to me. My why had something to do with watching it on Wide World of Sports back when I was a kid and not catching the finish because I had to go to serve at Mass at the time. It was the epic one where the person falls down and you saw the Gatorade commercials and all that other stuff. I was like, man, that person was the cool. They were Iron Man, and like that's driving me. Like no one's going to call you almost Iron Man, right? They're going to call you, an Iron Man if you finish, right? And so anyway, teaching them the why question, which really I think is something they probably should teach in schools more. Understand why you're doing what you're doing and why it's important to you.
That's a huge question. So walk us through the evolution from year 1, just a simple dollar value on the board to what did you do year 2? Was it another dollar value? How did that evolve and into where it is today?
Yeah, so I don't remember the specific goals. I remember, I think it was, I wanted to learn Spanish, and I'd read Ferris's book, so I picked up Duolingo, right? So we went from a dollar value to an increased dollar value and then something else, right? And so it's like, I want to learn Spanish. So I'm going to practice 5 times a week on Duolingo and or something like that. And I speak pretty decent Spanish. Please don't quiz me right now because my accent's garbage, but my kids speak fluently.
That's
Right.
Really, your
incredible.
kids can speak. That's
Yep.
impressive.
Not from Duolingo. I sent them to a language school, but they correct me all the time. So it went from one goal to 2. And then somewhere around, I want to say, like the 5th or 6th year, we started adding goals that were personal, spiritual, and physical. Like, so personal growth, or maybe business and personal. I might be mixing it up. But like sailing's a personal goal. Losing 5% body fat is a physical goal. Cash is financial. Like, so we would break them out into different areas. The fun one, which, she'll murder me for this, but she's not going to listen to your podcast, so we're good, is that I put a number up on the board, and because I didn't want to write it out, right? And we have people over all the time, and the number was representing number of intimacy nights that I was hoping to accomplish. And
What was the number?
400. And
That's adjusted for inflation.
yeah, right. So, but when you're a busy family, right? Sometimes you got to plan that stuff out, man. Like, you got to plan date nights. You got to like figure that out. It's just not when the mood hits you. And I'm not saying our lives are regimented by that, but that was a goal I didn't hit, right?
But you certainly strove for it.
But you know what was funny is the conversations and the disarming that happened when people would come over to dinner and be like, "What's that number?" Right? And then she'd turn red. Like, oh my gosh, and I'd explain it, and they're like, people go, "We need to do that," right? And I'm like, it was halfway joking, but halfway like what I wanted to do was have intentional romance with my wife and dates, and intimacy.
Well,
Right?
intentionality doesn't happen by accident.
Sure.
By definition,
Exactly.
like it's intentional. Like, one of the things that my girlfriend, now fiance, and I got into the habit of doing a few months ago now is every Sunday morning doing a family meeting and talking about what was working, what was not working the last week, but then looking forward in the week and like planning out date nights, planning out walks, planning out time that we have together. And it's like, if you don't do that, you're going to find other crap to fill in that time.
Mm-hmm.
But once you block it off, I mean, she and I are both like crazy about our calendars. Like, we schedule everything. And so it's like, if it's on our calendar, we're not going to, double book ourselves. We're going to like block off that time. And it's like, hey, this is time for us. And that intentionality goes a long way.
Absolutely, yeah. And then, so it matured from there. I mean, that's a funny anecdote where, again, we missed a goal, but I wasn't expecting that one to be realized. It would have been cool, I guess.
So
but
along those lines, real quick, do you set up incentives if you get all your goals done? Are there rewards? Are there
I
punishments?
think the goal itself is its incentive. And to David's point, I know that I'm in the bottom of the leaderboard this year. My youngest knows that he didn't read 15 books, and he tried to paper whip it at the end of the year one year. And reading's always one of them. Like, we have to do that because you mentioned, look, the books you read.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, oh, I read, 2 10-page graphic novels. That doesn't count, right?
Going for the
Like,
kids' books.
right? Yeah.
Little engine that could.
So I guess it's just shame and new skills is how we're managing that. I didn't really think about. I just know, and it doesn't feel good. What feels good, though, even in the recognition on December 31, like, we make it an event now, so it's evolved into an event. I think last year we did lobster and steak, right, for New Year's, or shrimp or something like that, and it was a thing. Like, we're going to sit down. And you know about it before it's coming in my household. You know that, hey, the 31st is coming between Christmas and now. We need to think about what we want to do next year, which is really the dumbest thing, because it's not, the world gives us a reset on the first of the year, but you could start a yearly goal board October 1.
Yeah,
if
you could sync
want
it with
to.
the school schedule.
You can sync it with whatever you could make it on the 14th
Yeah.
if you want to. It's a ritual for us. So we get a nice dinner. We go crazy with dessert. We were talking about sweets before the show. I mean, we get crazy.
Don't
with
talk to me about desserts
Yeah,
right
yeah.
now. Like,
and it's fun, and the kids are bought into it. And then we're done, and then we watch the ball drop, and we have a good time. And then the next morning we wake up. You have a decision to make. Do I want to get after my goal today or not? And you know it because it's staring at you right there on there. And that's the history of the goal board. I've tried to figure out not really tried. It hasn't been a goal of mine to figure out how to mass produce goal boards and sell them and create a different revenue stream, because to me it reminded me too much of printing. And I was like, let someone else do it. It's just too easy.
Would you be willing to take a picture of it and let us put it on the show notes for this
Sure.
episode so people can see the outline of kind of how you guys structure this if they want to make their own style of goal for their family?
Yeah, absolutely.
and we can blur out the number in the corner.
The number,
We'll
the
put
numbers.
Ford back up in there
Look, we
again.
developed habits through that process, and no, the number in the corner is not up there. But yeah, I'll take care of it for you.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, the goal board's incredible, and it can be just as simple as chalkboard, whiteboard, piece of paper. It doesn't really matter. It's just the practice of it.
Yeah, one of my favorite books out there is 4 Disciplines of Execution. It's by Covey. Actually, it's by Chris McChesney, who came out of the school of thought of Covey. And it's kind of like Measure What Matters. It's kind of like One Thing to a degree. But he talks about the scoreboard. And to your point, it can be anything, right? I don't believe in vision boards because I need numbers associated with it. A goal needs to be specific, measurable, attainable, timeline, all this other stuff. So we have the timeline because it's our annual goal board. But in the 4DX book, he gives the example of a football game. And you can look at a scoreboard really, really quickly and know if someone is winning, losing, or tied in that scoreboard. Now, there's 5,000 other metrics that, definitely in baseball, that people focus on. But to use the football analogy, right, you know based on points. Are you winning or losing? You don't care about third down. You're not seeing third down conversion on the scoreboard, right? You're seeing what down it is, what's the score, how many timeouts they have. And so as long as you have a scoreboard that is visible to the 100,000 people watching, to the people watching at home, or whoever your audience is, you're going to focus on it. It does not need to be so detailed with irrelevant statistics that you get caught up in. And 2 years ago, I think we were talking about one of the goals. It was I wanted to do yoga 4 times a week. You want to take a guess on how many times I did yoga a week before I realized that this was not what I needed to do? It was 0, right? I just didn't do it because I was training for
That was
a
quite
triathlon.
literally a stretch goal.
Yeah, a stretch goal. Yeah, you're funny. But it was one of those going, man, if I don't do this, I'm not going to get the flexibility. And so, I think it was January, 5th. And these goals are not hard and fast, right? Like, people change. Like, I try to keep mine consistent, but there has been an evolution where I've changed them. It's like, I want to improve my flexibility and health. And by that, I want to measure it going, I want to be able to touch my heel to my butt, right? And I want to be able to touch my toes. And I'm not a very flexible person physically when it comes to those things. So I incorporated stretching. I got the goal that I wanted, as opposed to subbing out workouts for yoga and stuff like that. So there has been some evolution where we hit the majority of our goals. We don't always hit them the way we think we're going to hit them. And I've had to do some revisions because I'm just like, man, that didn't work out. This year, I'm past that revision stage for my sailing goal. I still think I'm going to be able to get it done. There's going to be some hurt feelings come November when I don't want to travel somewhere else for Thanksgiving, but I want to get this goal done. And it's that important to me because I don't know what next year is going to look like. And the hurt feelings are going to be like, family members I didn't want to go see anyway for holidays. But
Hopefully they're not watching either.
they're not listening.
Well, when you ninja call me, I will think to ask you how the sailing
Yeah.
quest is
Yeah.
going.
You'll see you're going to come over tonight, I think, and you're going to see the book Sailing for Dummies. That was the first one I
Yes.
bought, which if you're a dummy, you shouldn't sail, right? So it's like parenting for dummies. Like come on.
Flying
They don't
airplanes
have
for dummies,
self-driving
probably
boats?
not.
Yeah. No.
Wait, so you're going down to Mexico to sail, or Gulf of
I think
Mexico?
I'm going to go to Mexico.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So is it in Spanish or English?
That'll be fun to figure out.
Yeah,
I have
I
not
know.
done
I
that.
was going to say.
Either way, I'll be good. But I think it's going to be English.
Yeah.
You can work a boat down.
Like, how do you say port and starboard
I
in
was say, you gotta
Spanish?
switch those around.
Izquierda is left,
Yeah.
right? Is that
Derecho.
right? Derecho is right. So, yeah, I think we're good there. But but you can work. It's PVR, right? So it's not deep Mexico by any means.
You'll be dodging whales in the Gulf.
Gosh,
there.
I hope so.
That'd
be
be
amazing.
incredible.
How'd you die? Got hit by a whale learning to sail. Right? It rhymes too.
I know. That'd be a good kid's book. Don't be like Mike. A whale got
Dodging
him.
a whale, learning to sail.
Dodging whale learning to
A
sail.
40-some-year-old's guide to living your dream. Right?
Love
So,
it.
Well, this has been awesome. Thanks for walking us through some of those habits. So, two questions, kind of as we wrap things up. One would be, who is this for? If someone's listening to this, going, "Man, I want to implement a goal board." Who should do this? That's part one.
yeah, I would say if you're serious enough to write it down, that's when it becomes real. Otherwise, it's just kind of a dream, right? Like the best business plans in the world are written down.
So, if you actually want to take action,
You got to write it down, man. Like it's not going to happen. There's so many good ideas. I've got a million great bad ideas out there that I'll talk offline about. Because one of them hit me yesterday. I haven't written it down yet.
Yes,
but
can't
like,
wait.
if you're serious about it, write it down. If you're really serious about it, put it up, right? And you will be amazed at how it just changed. It's the belt.
I love that. If
Yeah.
you're serious about it, write it down. If you're really serious about it, put it up.
You now have a personal accountability
it's the
from
feedback.
everybody that comes to your house, and make it look good. So like don't laminate a pink poster board and put that on the just that would be one
With
of
chicken scratch all over
my
it.
daughter
yeah.
would totally. I totally did a great science project, right? You know, it's a like you want it to look good. It's a great conversation piece, but put it up because then I'm not scared. I'm confident that I'm going to hit it.
I love that.
Yep. Second question.
All right, so that's part one. Maybe a silly question, but the anti-question to that is, who is this not for? So who should, that's listening and it's like this does not apply to them.
I think we were talking earlier about people, right? And I've often say people are the most volatile product in the world, right? Like they can just change on a dime. This is not for people who stress over success or failure in an unhealthy way, right? If this is going to add too much pressure to your life and it's not your goal, don't do it, right? Like you're not a quitter, right? It's just like I've got friends who have more anxious minds than I do. This would not suit them well because they're going to live in a cycle of thinking that they are less than because they didn't do what they said they were going to do, because intent outpaces execution, right? And that's a big stone for them to jump over. So if it's not going to be healthy for you, don't do it. I guarantee you this, if you are married and your spouse is not bought into the goals that you are setting for yourself and it affects them, don't do it until they're bought in, right?
That's great advice.
Like you run an Ironman or any triathlon, no one's helping you. You got to do the work yourself. You have to carry the work yourself. So, all that training you're doing by yourself, but it is directly affecting them. Yeah. So you got to be on the same page
You have to have buy-in from all parties of interest.
Yeah, like the circle of influence, circle of concern, right?
Right.
I'd say just be selective and don't go too big, right? If you've never done goal setting exercises from a personal standpoint, and I'm going deeper. I mean, we've gone way deeper than just the SMART acronym. Like find something that's a stretch, but is not a BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious goal.
Well, keep it simple. Your first goal board was literally one number.
Right. Yeah. It's like, I want to be a billionaire. Okay. Good luck. Right. Me too. Right. Am I willing to do the work to be a billionaire? Maybe. Right. Am I willing to do it in the next 365 days? Probably not. Right.
If you mean by buying lotto tickets, I'm achieving my
Right,
goals,
yeah.
I'll do that.
Right. Yeah. So that would be like the who it's not for. If it's going to ruin your life, don't do it. And I think you know that. But there are people out there that that wouldn't even ask themselves that question. They'd just be like, oh my gosh, I
have
read
to do
this amazing book. I need to do this. And then they get a bunch of books. And if you've ever worked for anybody, you've experienced the manager who came back from a conference, or it's like
All new ideas.
like guess what we're going to implement immediately, right?
Damn, I'm embarrassed because I'm that manager. I read a book and I'm like, guys, all hands.
I remember growing up, we hated it if we saw our mom reading a new parenting book. We're like, oh no, there's gonna be new rules, new structures, a goal board.
Right. And then you're going to be like, hold the line for 30 days because it's going to be something else. So if you know you're that personality, don't do that.
I love it.
Yeah.
Several interesting people I follow: Nathan Barry with ConvertKit, James Clear wrote Atomic Habits. He'd be a great guest to have on at some point. But they do year-end reviews, and so it's a way for them to document, what did I learn this year? What are some cool trips we did? How'd the business do? How'd the family do? Just kind of occurred to me with the 14, 15 years that you have with goal boards. It'd be really interesting if you could go back. Hopefully you have photos or remember them. It'd be cool to just put your family's word of the year and just see how your family's developed every single year.
Yeah. I'm confident we have some of it. I don't know that we have all of it.
It'd be fun to piece together.
But during that dinner, if you will, and part of this is just who we are as a family. Like when you ask how your day was, we'll go, what was the highlight of the year? And with kids, it's usually like the most recent 30 days, right? It's like, oh, I really liked when my teacher was nice to me yesterday, or something silly like that. But their answers have gotten better, where they go, I really enjoyed I really enjoyed learning how to surf in Hawaii, right? That was a big deal for them. I really enjoyed this. But we're also saying, what did we not enjoy? What was the worst part of the year? And it could be a family member passing, something tragic. It could be, hey, I didn't hit my goal, or this. And then, like, where did we grow the most this year? And we do help our kids and my spouse, really, going, look, I think at the beginning of the year you were worried about this, and you've really grown in this area. And I think this has to go and so sometimes it ties directly into the goals, sometimes it doesn't. But we do ask hard questions at that year-end review.
That's great. Well, Mike, thanks for being our guinea pig. Thanks for coming on. I learned a ton, and I'm sure our audience will as well. If anybody's an expert in sailing or wants to kind of check in and learn more about you.
If you have a boat that you would like to teach me to sail on, I will fly to you, so we're good.
Perfect. How can people find you if they want to?
I am, this is a sidebar, I don't even know if you know this. I am locked out of all of my social media with the exception of LinkedIn. I had my identity taken about a year and a half ago, and they changed my password. So tried to take $70K.
Oh boy.
Yeah, it was just a really bad deal. But I was a cash family. That was fun.
Well, his front door is unlocked, so if you can figure out.
But anyway, just find me on LinkedIn, right?
Perfect. Mike McCarthy.
Michael J. or MJ McCarthy is what I'm under there.
Cool. We'll link to that in the show notes as well.
Yeah.
Well, with that, that's the first podcast. So thanks so much for coming on, and we appreciate it.
Guys, I appreciate it. I'm excited for this, and I hope your community learns a lot from it.